Keep your eyes on the road, your hands upon the wheel.
So I'm an OTR truck driver, which means that I drive across the country multiple times in a month-long period. I'd like to share a story with you. On a dark July night around 2 a.m., I was headed south on US 93 highway in Nevada, approximately 30 miles north of Las Vegas. Traffic was scarce. I hadn't seen a single vehicle for the last 40 minutes at least. The only source of light that illuminated the road were the truck headlights. I was on a phone with a friend of mine just chatting about random stuff, when, in the distance, about 300 feet ahead of me, I saw something on the shoulder of the road. At first, I thought it might have been a turned over construction sign or a bag of some sort, but as I was approaching the object, I started to make out some features. A human-like figure, I thought. Just to be clear, that area is deserted and there's absolutely nothing to be found within a 25-mile radius. When I was about 5 yards away, I could see it clearly. It was a boy, 8 to 10 years old, I would say, with a school backpack and white plush bunny in his right arm, held tightly against his chest. He was just standing there, with this cold stare, completely unemotional, looking me directly in the eyes. He didn't break the stare as I passed him. He didn't even blink or flinch. And let me remind you that it's an 80,000-pound semi-truck moving at 65 miles an hour. It's virtually impossible not to react to it driving past you about a yard away. My heart was racing. My whole body was covered in goosebumps. A cold chill went down my spine. I don't think I've ever been so disturbed in my life, since I've never had any paranormal encounters. Once I passed him, the first thing that came to my mind was that if I see him appear again a couple of miles ahead, I'm going to have a heart attack. But it never happened. The rest of the trip was uneventful. I still don't know what it was. I'm not trying to claim that it was a ghost or a spirit of a deceased child. I just can't find any adequate explanation to it. It was definitely not a hallucination since I was wide awake and talking on the phone. It just seems weird to me. What in the world was a 10-year-old kid doing by himself in the middle of the desert? Just want to say that the story is not made up. I experienced it myself in July this year. Please let me know if you've ever been around that area and seen something similar. Thanks. This is my dad's story. Just to explain, his ex-British Army, not scared of anything and super practical. He became a lorry driver about 1975, I think. This was not long after he started. So this happened around 5 a.m. on a summer's day. It was a bit misty like you get some mornings, early but bright, and he was heading out of London on the A3. He's driving his lorry and up ahead was a young woman, early 20s in a long blue dress, standing by the side of the road. It must have been before the A3 was duelled, and all the barriers were put up. So Dad sees her, thinks she's waiting for a ride to work. Just as he's about to go past her, she jumps in front of his lorry. He immediately slams on the brakes, as he's sure he's hit her, but he didn't feel a bang. But where else could she be? A couple of cars stop to see what's going on. Dad shakily explains and the drivers kindly offer to stay while he looks for her under the lorry. Dad looks and she's not there. Other drivers look and there's nothing. No body, no blood, no sign of anyone. They all freak out a bit and then decide leaving ASAP is a great idea. He can't explain it. He knows she was there and he hit her. He spent the rest of his driving career avoiding that route. I was driving through eastern Washington on some state roads. There were no rest stops or cities, but I had done the route enough to know there were these massive dirt areas every 40 miles where you could park safely away from the road. I decided to call it a night and closed my blinds and laid down to watch something on my phone. After roughly an hour, I hear someone try to open the driver's side door. I haven't heard any vehicles on the road the whole time I'm parked, but I get up to peek out the curtains. As I'm looking out into the blackness of the driver's side window, I hear them try the passenger side door. I peek down from the top of the curtain, but can't see anything. So I start the truck and kick on the lights. I'm fairly freaked out at this point, so I'm still not opening the curtains, but instead peeking through gaps. Nothing. Nobody is standing near either of my doors or parked within sightline. I take a deep breath and close the sleeper curtains too, because for some reason that's going to make things better, right? After laying back down and convincing myself that something blew against the truck, and it only sounded like the doors, it was fairly windy outside and a lot of flat ground, I hear what sounds like someone trying to pry open the vents on the sleeper. The door handles start clicking again and the truck starts shifting like someone is climbing on it. I hit the little alarm button in the sleeper hoping to spook them off, but it does nothing but add to the noise of door handles, fingers tapping on windows and chassis, and the hiss of air coming out of the suspension. Then suddenly, it stops. A few moments where I can only hear myself breathing and my heart pounding before I hear another truck approach and then drive by. I spent the next few hours waiting for whatever it was to come back, but it never did. In the morning, I couldn't find any footprints or damage to my truck, but on every window were tiny, human-looking handprints, like a toddler had licked their hands and stuck it to my window, over and over. My name is Rick Martinez, and I am a retired truck driver. This happened when I was like 30 years old. I am now 62. On the road, I've seen many strange things. I've told this story over and over. A lot of people don't believe me, but it starts off in Stockton, California, where I picked up a load of pipe. My destination was Salt Lake City, Utah. I was supposed to refuel in Barstow, California at a truck stop, but lo and behold, they were out of fuel. So I told my supervisor, hey, I got like half a tank of fuel. He told me to continue and hit the first truck stop I seen. So 100 miles into Nevada, nothing but desert. Seen nothing but sparsely lit desert with a couple of towns. When I noticed my gauge set was reading empty, and I'm thinking that's not right. So I took the first exit I saw and pulled over. Told my supervisor, who was right behind me an hour away, that I was afraid to continue on and run the tanks dry. So he told me to sit still and he would be by in an hour, and we could siphon some of the fuel from his tanks into mine. So I sat there, and I noticed that it was a small town with sparse lighting. As I sat there, I couldn't run the engines, so I couldn't listen to the radio. So I just sat there in silence. I don't do drugs, and I didn't make this up, so listen carefully. As I'm sitting there, I notice a lot of undone construction. A trailer parked to my right, completely dark, and a church off to my left, about a block away with its lights on. It's about 2 a.m. and I see this jackrabbit hopping around my truck. It hops around and just stares at me and keeps hopping around. So I'm getting hungry and I notice what looks to be a convenience store another block away from the church. So I get off the truck and decide to walk to the store. While I'm walking, I keep hearing this dog howling like it's in pain. As I'm passing the church, the 2 doors are wide open, and I hear clapping like they're having services. As I pass the church, I look inside and there's no one, except for this skinny white old man reading from the Bible and talking about hell. I don't linger too long and pass the church. Then I hear clapping again. About then, the dog starts howling again. I notice there's a bunch of empty houses on this street that goes up a hill. I'm still making my way towards what I think is a little mini-mart. All the time, the dog keeps howling. All the lights are on. As I go inside, this little old lady with glasses is reading a book. There's hardly anything in this store, maybe a few cans of food, a couple of bags of chips, only water in the refrigerators. The whole time, the lady didn't even pick her head up from the book. So I grab a water, grab chips, I'm hungry as hell, and there's nothing to eat. So I asked the old lady, "Is this all you have? And where is everybody at?" She told me everybody moved out and new construction was supposed to begin like 6 months ago. And she didn't say anything after that, so I paid her and walked out, and started walking back towards the truck. The whole time, the dog is still howling. So as I got closer towards the church, I looked up the street towards where I heard the howling from. I decided to go see for myself why the dog was howling. Houses on both sides of the street are boarded up and dark. I saw a house with the lights on, with about a 5-foot fence. When I looked over the fence, I was in shock. What I saw was a man in his underwear with a chain attached to his neck on all fours, howling. The hairs on my arms and neck stood up as I saw this other man burst through the back door and kick the man on all fours and was yelling at him to shut up. He ran into a doghouse. I was in shock and turned and ran back down the hill to my truck. As I passed the church, both the doors still wide open, but there were no lights on anymore, and still I can hear the clapping. Finally, I made it to my truck, called my supervisor and told him what I saw. Told him to hurry and get here so I can leave. My supervisor asked, "What exit were you talking about?" And I told him. He said, "Oh, I passed that." He had to turn around and come back to get me. So I'm sitting there and the rabbit is still hopping around my truck. It stopped and looked up at me as I'm sitting on my truck. I'm not saying the rabbit said it, but this is what I heard. "Leave." I rolled up the window and waited for my supervisor, who showed up 5 minutes after. I told my supervisor what happened and he just laughed at me and told me I'm going to have to drug test you. I did not sleep on that whole trip to Utah until I got to Salt Lake City. Believe it or not, I swear this is what happened. Hello watchers and listeners. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed that video, please hit the like button and consider subscribing if you haven't already. A huge thank you to all the Reddit users who kindly allowed me to use their stories. Links to everything will be in the description below. As always, thank you all so much for your continued support. I really do appreciate it. And remember,
Papa loves you.